Yeah, so I'll just give give a little framework of childhood, a little bit of the journey, and then I'll and then we can probably segue into the business side. Would be
Yes.
awesome. So I grew up in the east coast of Canada in a small town called Quispamsis in a province of New Brunswick, and I grew up with a pretty normal family, multi-generational Christian, and we were Baptist, and we actually lived a pretty good life. Went camping every weekend, and we lived on a beautiful river. And then when I was 14, my brother had an accident, and a bullet had went off and went up through its head, and so we had multiple brain surgeries. And but what that did is that totally traumatized our family. And then my mom really wanted to have him home, so he was full care. So she basically dedicated her entire life to him. And then what happened, she didn't take care of her trauma. None of our family did. And we just saw like our family, the whole fabric slowly disintegrate over time. And then my father used to hate to come home. And so he would spend more and more time. He started drinking and would come home like staggeringly drunk. And this was a man that was was a deacon and on the board of a Christian university. But his whole life began to shift. And then he ended up over time leaving my mom. Then he mismanaged his business. He was not focused at all. So that all crumbled. My younger brother attempted suicide multiple times. So we just our family totally, the whole fabric was fractured. And then at 18, I said, well, I'm going to live life my way. And I made a conscious decision to turn and just live a rebellious life. It didn't feel rebellious, but I lived life totally my way. And that it took me 28 years of slowly, because I went far away and then slowly inching back. And then 2016, I finally made Jesus Lord of my life. And that's really where so much started to change at that point. I didn't realize how much deep-seated pride was there. I didn't realize how far my life had veered away from God. I was married multiple times. I practiced yoga 3 to 5 times a week. Sex before marriage, like none of that stuff even mattered to me at that point. And then when I made Jesus Lord, all of a sudden everything began to change. And I read the Bible for the first time in a year. I was hungry for the Word. I began to pray for the first time in my life. I went to Restoring the Foundations and really started to look at what strongholds, ungodly beliefs. Getting into the generational lines, it began to really do that work. I remember when I left, that was July of 2016, and when I left Restoring the Foundations, it was a week-long program. Two ministers and myself, the whole world changed. Like everything was bright, and I saw things differently. And then, but in the meantime, I was actually going through a lot with my family. So I had 2 daughters, Abby and Bryn, and they were going through pretty severe addiction at the time. And we had just put them both in addiction centers. And leading up to these addiction centers, we went through a lot. There was it was a real descent into darkness. And when they were in those addiction centers, we found out that the reason that some of the pain they were covering up was they had been sexually abused for 10 years, sexually, mentally, and physically abused by someone close to our family. And that really that rocked us when we understood just the level of pain and brokenness, and that had led them into drugs. And so I was at one point spending $40,000 a month on addiction care, wrapping everything I possibly could around them, and they would come out, and within a short period of time they would descend again. And then they were raped multiple times, suicide attempt, like just terrible stuff as things began to unravel. And then in 2018, I was at Epic. And things looked like they were probably more stable than they'd been in a long time. My business was going like this. Had another company that looked like it was going to go off the charts, and living in a $6 million home, NBA courtside seats. Like I had just gotten married a few years ago in a 900-acre estate in Tuscany. So by the world standards, I had everything, and it looked really great. And I thought too that we had gone through what I thought was our suffering. And we were on our way out the other side. And then, so that was February 2018 that I was presenting at Epic. And then in March that year, everything started to, in May that year, everything started to change. That this new company I was starting, it was funded by my main company. My main company took a huge shift, and it put me offside financially with that. I went into special loans. I had multiple 7-figure investments. They all went down to fractional, and didn't have access to that. Another big one, I had literally no access. Access was cut off. I had a large investor, which was the Ontario Power Generation, was going to put $50 million in. They pulled out in May. And so things were looking pretty shaky. And then at that point, so that was early May. And then on May 23rd, my oldest daughter, Abby, was murdered. And I was leaving the office that day, and I almost went to her apartment, and I had a call, and that she had been stabbed. And I thought, okay, it wasn't unusual. I mean, we had been called for things like that multiple times. I've been in to the hospital with her, and so I thought, optimistic again. Okay, this is another low point, a chance for her to turn her life around. And then we get to the hospital. It turns out that she actually was dead on arrival. And that night, I was totally disoriented because I couldn't believe that I'd given my life to the Lord. I'd passed everything over to Him, and how could He ever allow this to happen? So when I went to sleep, my head was spinning. My whole family, everybody was just distraught is an understatement. Like they're not non-functioning, and that continued for quite a while. I woke up the next morning. So this was on the evening. Closed my eyes. I thought it was in a horror show. I woke up the next morning, and I looked over to my wife at the time, and I said, "I've got joy," and it was inexpressible. The peace that I had was something I'd never experienced before, and that's a peace that have stayed with me ever since that point. I had such revelation of the mercy of God over my daughter, and where she was today. She had professed her faith in Jesus just 2 days before to her sister, and so the reality of heaven. I didn't know. I wasn't really that well versed in the kingdom of God at that time. But what was happening is the reality of the eternal kingdom of God was superseding the temporary circumstantial realm, and just knowing that she was safe with our Heavenly Father. And then He gave me revelations and dreams with Abby as well. And so absolutely beautiful. And then we did her funeral. Well, I ended up doing her funeral because she wasn't a churchgoer. And so I didn't know if anybody would show up. And we had this good-sized church packed, overflowing. And we had non-Christians, Christians, drug dealers. We had the oddest mix of people you could ever imagine. Business leaders and pastors from my new engagement in life. And we just glorified God. We had worship teams there an hour before, and so I thought, okay, this is the turning point, because my other daughter, Bryn, was still in quite a struggle. And so in June, so this was May of 2018. In June of 2018, I had a prophetic word, and it was slash and burn. And I said, okay, this doesn't. And the guy said he was a very mature apostle in Canada. And he said, I don't give this word lightly, but I've learned to give it direct wherever the Lord gives me. And he said, everything's going down. He said, but there's going to be beautiful new growth going up. So I realized that I was kind of in the middle of something, which was very true. So what would happen after that? I almost lost my second daughter. So the next 2018 and all of 2019, she was suicidal, screaming to die. She was on everything from heroin to pot to antidepressants, anti-anxieties. She was mentally ill. She would literally rip her hair out, throw herself against the wall. She lost a third of her body weight, so she was down to under 90 pounds at 5'8". So she was just emaciated, dark circles under her eyes, sickly, hopeless. And so we'd be praying for her, of course, but she would be screaming like continuously, "I want to die, I can't, and I'm crazy." I said, "Bryn, we're praying, and you're actually declaring over yourself the exact opposite." And then it got to a point in October 2019. Bryn finally decided, okay, I'll try deliverance, and because we had tried everything else that money could buy, and so we went into this deliverance session, and Bryn was very, very nervous, very skittish on the drive there. And so we go in, and this lady was highly prophetic, and she prophesied over Bryn, and Bryn was like just kind of in shock as just to see that God knows her, He sees her, and things that she had never told anybody before the Lord was revealing to her. And then she comes out, and she looks quite different, and so I was filled with hope and excitement. And then we go into a restaurant, Bryn and I together, and we were both fairly excited. And then she goes, "Dad, the voices are coming back," and my heart just sank. I'm like, what? Like, how could this be? And because, I believe strongly in deliverance. I've seen it happen over and over. So I took her to a hotel. We were on the second floor of that building, and she goes to the balcony, and all she could hear was jump, 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 and so which really scared her. So she had to go down and sit on the curb, and then we ended up going back to Toronto that night. And then on the drive back, she was so distraught because she thought, this is my life. And all of a sudden I switched lanes, and she goes, "Careful, Dad, I don't want to die." And then we both looked at each other and we both smiled, and we're like, wow. And then we started laughing. And then we get to her place, and I mean, she needed a lot more deliverance than just a spirit of death. So it was like, there was a start. And but that night she had an encounter with God for the first time in her life. And so she was crying and on her knees in her little condo, and the Lord showed up. Then I took her on a 3-week road trip in the U.S. I literally just flew into a city, grabbed a car, and she and I just drove. And then we came back to Toronto. We went to the east coast of Canada to visit my mom, just as another landing ground. And what was amazing is, so this was now November of 2019. And then, so we started life coaching with a Holy Spirit inspired lady who the Lord had connected us with. And she said to Bryn, she had a vision, and she said, "I see, Bryn, you're going to be presenting at a conference, and at a Transform Our World conference, and everybody's going to be cheering and crying." And I didn't even think about it. I didn't even, and I said, okay, that's great. It seemed like years away. And then I'm talking to Ed Silvoso in December, and he goes, "How's Bryn?" And I said, she's turned a corner for sure, a long way to go. And he goes, "I want her to speak." And I said, "Okay, you mean next year?" And he said, "No, in January at the Global Leadership Conference." And I'm like, she's never spoken. She's barely been to church. I'm like, wow. And so anyway, I tell Bryn, this life coach, and they were so excited. So Bryn ends up preparing her testimony. So just about a month after she really began to get a little bit of traction, she gives her testimony. Everybody cheering, standing ovation, everybody in tears, exactly as the vision. And then we were trying to find a place for Bryn to go to be really discipled and to get away from her lifestyle. And we tried to get her into Bethel and different places, and that didn't work. We ended up getting her into YWAM, and she had just an incredible transformative experience. But then I remember Patricia Bootsma, who does some work in this area with Catch the Fire, she had prophesied months before, when Bryn was still in the complete darkness, that Bryn would go to YWAM. And that was, again, I didn't even really hold on to it because it was so far from a reality. And now Bryn's got her biblical studies degree. She's written a book. We've done a teaching series on our Christian networks, and she now works for me at Flow Energy Solutions as well. So she's in the human resource department, which is really cool. So that's been an incredible turnaround, incredible story. And then what also happened is, I started to write the gospel of grace for my daughter. And then I started thinking, okay, well, there's other friends of hers that need help, and they don't know the Lord. So I started to just write the gospel. And then all of a sudden this flow started to happen. So I ended up publishing my first book called More Than Gold. So I was going through a divorce. That's the other thing too. In October, my wife said, "I can't be married to you." She was a yoga instructor, and there was just a real spiritual dynamic going on there as well. So I was going through that divorce. We lost our home, COVID lockdowns. I had a lawsuit that showed up at my door in October as well for $1 million. And a 3-year murder trial with my daughter. There was just everything. But I was writing on the goodness of God in a place, talking like this in a place of peace, and it was pretty incredible what God had done. So over the course of the next, everything did crumble pretty good, and then it's just in the process. But the Lord did so many incredible things in and through it. He revealed so much in me, and I kind of jokingly say now that I got the hell shaken out of me. So
that's through the midst of all of those storms, the Lord really has been faithful and has undergirded you and carried you, and so I guess kind of give us an update on this chapter that the Lord has used all of that to shape you. It's amazing that you carry His peace. I've been just around Him just a little bit and had a meal with Him and shared a round table with Him, and Bryan has a supernatural peace of God. It's a peace that passes understanding. That means it doesn't make sense in your head, but yet you know the Lord is in control and He is with you and He's for you. And He's always working His redemptive plan in the midst of chaos. And so I guess kind of you're coming through all of that period now, and God's using you in miraculous ways. And so why don't you kind of elaborate a little bit on that? How is the Lord using you these days?
To my shock, it's I never thought in a million years I'd have my own ministry, let alone with my daughter. And so that's called M46, based on Malachi 4:6, which is the Spirit of the Lord turning the hearts of the fathers to the children, children of the fathers. And then Isaiah 61 is just a Spirit of the Lord with freedom and redemption. So that's been incredible. So that's led us to we do regular blogs. We also write a blog for Tithely to 30 to 50,000 pastors. Bryn and I are on a teaching series with 100 Huntley Street. So we do these little 5-minute talks, and they just give us a topic, and we've just talked them through. So that's kind of regularly airing. We do. We have our own podcast, and I'm going to do another one on the Kingdom of Heaven starting in April or May. We've got books. So Bryn wrote a book. I wrote a book. I have a book coming out in about 3 weeks called As in Heaven. And I was writing up the next book for More Than Gold, and it was called Greater Than Silver, and it was in final editing. And this one's not even going to see the light of day, because it was funny, because I was in final editing, and I was like, it just doesn't feel right. But the kingdom message was exploding in me. And then I said, I'm going to write a new introduction on the kingdom. And then all of a sudden I did, and this huge book just came out last year, and we just finished it up in 2024. So that's coming out soon. I run a children's charity now for children in poverty. It started with children in poverty and families in poverty, and now it's spreading across the province of New Brunswick, and then it's going to go across Canada. And that's just had wild success we operate in the schools and on the weekends. And we really work with children that are high priority or impoverished neighborhoods. But what we see, it's a human condition requiring, everybody's in need of love, connection. So in Canada, you guys probably know a lot about what's happening there. So we couldn't call it a Christian organization, but it's called Be Me Kids. So we bring the kingdom just using secular words, but we've got an incredible staff, and we operate 6 days a week, and we're seeing incredible transformations. We're bringing kingdom values into the school system, and they're actually living them out daily. We're breathing life into kids and doing social emotional learning, and just a whole bunch of stuff around there that really helps numeracy and literacy. And then my company Flow has just been, the Lord has just breathed new life into that. So one of the things I've learned that as the Lord is doing a transformation in me, then it begins to go in your family, your business, and just begins to go outward. And so Flow has transformed the last few years into a kingdom company, just an expression of the kingdom of God. And it's been the most beautiful journey ever. And the Lord's just leading us one step at a time, and it's been so much fun. So we went down 2018, 2019, 2020. 2021, 22, and then 23, we start to go like this, and we've got a 2X in the next 3 years, and we have a 5X 5-year strategy in place. So everything is beginning to shift, and from that place of brokenness and being in the fire, the Lord has me continuously with people that are in that place of burning and refinement. And so all the time now, the Lord just connects me with people that are in trouble and hurting, and it's been just the encouragement and comfort and grace I've received. I have the privilege of allowing the Lord to move through me that way as well.
Mm-hmm. And just another important thing that I think, how much prayer, in your business, tell me a little bit about that, because I think prayer is foundational for everything that we do. And, sometimes our mindset is if all else fails, pray. Or we'll say, well, all we can do is pray. And that should be the starting point, because that's where we get, it's not just calling upon God for help, but that's where we get heavenly strategy and insight and direction and guidance. Matter of fact, when we look at the book of Daniel, we're going to see that he interprets dreams and he hears from heaven. And because of this supernatural touch on his life, there's tremendous influence and favor. And so I know that prayer is a vital part. So tell us just a little bit about what you do as an organization.
Well, great. So I as part of the CEO role, I consider the primary part of that is the CSO, which is the Chief Spiritual Officer. So that actually has me in prayer and in the realm of the spirit more than I don't do anything in the business anymore. I do on the business about 20% of my time. Then the Lord has released me into actually all 7 spheres of society now, which has been incredible. But what's really empowered that is prayer. So so in our office we've got a house of prayer, and where we do worship. We meet quite regularly there as well. And so we've got a worship leader that's stationed there, and to really stoke that. Then we also have a prayer team that is, so we have 5 prayer team, which are part of staff at Flow. And so we've got 12% of our staff are actually people that pray. And so our day starts off, so I'll be in the house of prayer. We invite our building in if anybody wants to come. And so 8 to 8:30 or 8:30 to 9, we'll start off there. And then at 9 o'clock, we gather with and it's all online with a lot of our senior team, and we tithe the beginning of our day, the first fruits of our day, to the Lord in prayer. And so we begin just relationally seeking the Lord, and then we just move into prayer and agreement. And then from there, I jump on with the prayer teams, and we have some people that pray individually. We have some that gather, and so there's different mixes throughout the week. But typically, we connect with different agendas, but it's always the Lord's agenda, and the Lord will kind of dictate on who and how we bring into those meetings. And then we've also got based on prophetic words and dreams and scriptures the Lord gives us. Every day we record it. So every month we start a new file. It's a share file with the executive team of the company and all the prayer team, and we're continuously just seeing what the Lord's doing. Then we have these threads that we continually follow, and then we also, and then that can be also spontaneous. Anything that we do, anywhere we go, like today, I have the prayer teams praying, the company's praying. Anytime we have a team in Mexico right now, and we're covering and praying for them. Also now, our prayer team, we used to be very insular in terms of our prayer, praying for ourselves, our families, and the business. And now we've kind of exploded way out beyond us. So as the Lord has really matured and grown us, He's put lots of different things. So we're bringing people in and that are in trouble, companies that are in trouble, and we'll do a prayer pod around them, and we'll start this FaceTime group FaceTime group. And then what we'll do is we'll surround them in encouragement and prayer and see what the Lord's doing. And they kind of have that as their kind of emergency reach out and strengthening. And we've done that. We've got lots of pods going up from people in the entertainment industry, but mainly the marketplace. But really anybody the Lord really brings to us. And so we've just been strengthening. And then of course Israel and lots of other things. So sometimes say, well, what have you guys been praying for today? And we're like, the nation. And it's like so it's kind of fun, like all the different things the Lord is doing and manifesting, and it's continuously evolving and growing all the time too.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I wanted to just take a moment, maybe do some questions and answers. I was joking. I told Bryan I was going to say that between the two of us, we know everything. And then if you ask me something I don't know, I'm going to say I don't know that one, but Bryan knows that one. But anyway, that's a bad joke. Okay. Well, but as a pastor, you're allowed one bad joke per Sunday. That's in the manual. So. But does somebody have a question about kingdom business? Specifically to Bryan? Love to hear from you. Does somebody have a question on how to principles that he operates with, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all based on the calling of the company. So every business has a redemptive calling and a redemptive gift. So, for example, at my company, we haven't been called into that realm so much, but we got called into child poverty, for example. And so then what we did is we funded and fueled that. So Be Me Kids started. What we did is we were the financial engine to get that going. And then we paralleled our banking relationships, our legal relationships, our human resources, all those things. So what we did is we basically incubated by taking the strength of the marketplace into a not-for-profit, into a child poverty, which then began to surge because it was biblical principles, a lot of discipline and excellence built into it. And in M46, our ministry too was spawned out of Flow, and then a lot of other things we're doing, like in Israel and so forth. So I think what you'll see is, as the Lord moves on kingdom businesses, whatever redemptive purposes God has for them, there'll be an expression of that business on the earth, and it should be also in the local community as well. So I think as the message of the kingdom goes forth and kingdom businesses begin to grab a hold of it, you'll begin to see a massive transformative move that, so for example, when I started the 2016 and 2017, I said, I'm gonna make a Christian company, and God, I'm gonna give you 51%. And I was an orphan still, and I still had a lot of religion in me. And so I tried to do this is how we're going to do it. And even the Christians didn't like it. They said, this is terrible. They rebelled even against the attempted Bible study. And then we did something called Transform Your Business, which is part of the Restoring the Foundations. So we did a really deep dive so in terms of the founders and executives, we did kind of like this, similar to a generational cleansing. We looked at what ungodly beliefs are we operating. So principles not of the kingdom of God, because if you operate under a lie, you're operating under the influence of that lie, whereas you're operating under the truth, you're under the influence of the truth. So we began to align with biblical principles. The other thing that happened is I still had prayer teams that were hired, but we weren't a praying company, it was just me. And that began a spiritual shift as well. Then we got into soul ties, we got into deliverance, and then the shift there was maintaining open heaven. And then and this is kind of like bringing in the culture of the kingdom, that as I began to change and transform, because the kingdom of God is in our hearts, yeah. Right? And it goes beyond nationality, denomination, and when you start to get a revelation of the kingdom of God, everything begins to flow from under that umbrella. Then the kingdom becomes a lifestyle, and it's how we operate, it's how we do life. And then the principles, after time, begin to become embedded in you. So after that, Transform Your Business, the prayer began, because we started to declaring our godly beliefs in place of our ungodly beliefs. So I would write that, script it out, and then I would script out prayers, and we just go around, because we weren't a praying company yet. People didn't really know how to pray. And then people began to transform over time. And now, like, the level of prayer is pretty incredible. So, and then in 2021, because of this, we actually changed our name. We changed our look, a new story. There was a whole new rebirth. So it was almost like a born again company, right? That kind of came with these new set of living stones that were transforming. And as the people began to transform, the company is just a group of people, and that's where the kingdom culture came in. So as companies begin to truly understand the kingdom and the purpose of the kingdom and their purpose within the kingdom, you're going to begin to see a lot of things change. And then when the economic power of the marketplace gets behind the calling and purposes on the hearts of those leaders in the businesses, you're going to begin to see a lot of transformational change in the city.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else have a question? Yes. Yes.
Amazing story. It seems like that you grew up in a God-filled family, got away from Christ, became highly successful, and then you found God again, and then everything went to crap. Staying with God when everything goes to crap is the tough part, right? And making it through that. That, to me, my question is, how do you make it through that? Because experience, like I've experienced that, where when I get close to God, it goes to crap, and when I'm not with Him, I'm successful. So
Well, I needed a total new heart because the way, like, the things of the world had quite a grip on me, more than I had assumed. And but so in our weakness his power is made perfect, and that's a scripture I never could understand, and it made very little sense to me for exactly the same reasons you're stating, because not by power nor by might, but it's by his Spirit. So what happened during those times, I mean, I needed propped up by the Word of God, spending time alone with him, but I also had to lean on other people. So I mean, we had, and that's where the body of Christ is critical. So that harmony and unity within the body of Christ, that if I was alone, I probably would have been slaughtered. But coming in, and same with all of us. But as we come in that unity, because if someone's attacked financially, right, people can rally around them. If somebody's attacked relationally, right, we can come around there. If somebody's attacked spiritually, right, we can come and rally around that. So the body of Christ as a whole is impenetrable and so strong. So I was literally continuously lifted up by others, and also the kingdom of heaven. The thing that's not understood is that Jesus is the door to the kingdom, but the entrance to the kingdom is through the cross. And that's getting to the place of selflessness. It's getting to a place of agape, that sacrificial love, which is our core foundational value at Flow. And so that deny yourself, pick up your cross and follow me is a crucified life. And it's that crucified life that the pain becomes. I've found that the pain is equivalent in the suffering and trials to the amount of self that's alive in me. And so when you realize that then you look at the Beatitudes, right? It doesn't sound very glamorous, like when you read that. But then look at the blessed life, a joy-filled life, like a life of being poor in spirit, of being meek, right? Of mourning, and then so when you begin to realize that becomes the treasure of heaven. And then when that's the treasure of heaven, you become to live above life circumstances. And then you begin to see from a heavenly perspective. I was telling Mahali last night that, you know, I've had pretty much everything that I've ever wanted. And I could have a lot of it back if I want it right now. But in Toronto, I don't even have an apartment. I actually throw a mattress in the back of my office. And I've done that for more than a year. When my daughter went to YWAM, I went from my huge home to her little 400 square foot apartment. And I mean, I might get a place sometime, but the Lord has called me to a place of just incredible simplicity right now, and extravagant giving and pouring myself out. And I tell you, like when I was in 2017 living the life of a king, I'm so much more thankful now on a mattress. And it's pretty incredible. So Mahali and I were talking about that yesterday. And it's just, it's an eye-opening to to be able to live heavenly minded and empowered by heaven, with heaven as our focal point. Because when you think about it, if you were to say, okay, how you live today would determine how you're gonna live your entire life. Boy, you would live biblical principles. You'd be like, this is amazing. It's no different than how we live in this life determines how we're going to live for eternity. Right, so this eternal mindset it changes everything, because the storms of life, the ups and downs, keep your eyes on Jesus and not on the waves. And then as eternity becomes your destination, because we are people that are born from heaven to earth to bring heaven to earth, right? And then we have that one final judgment at the end of the day before Jesus, and that determines how we're going to spend eternity. So this life is mist in the air, here for a short while and then gone again. And so and we're all so pregnant with purpose. Like each and every one of us are meant to rule and reign in life, and that's never over people. But we talked about the enemy in the songs. Like we barely even go into spiritual warfare anymore, because we know God is absolutely sovereign, that He's the King of the universe, and the whole thing about the kingdom of God, as you move into that, He's the King, right? And so if He's the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Creator of everything, is our Father. Right, that's our source of provision. Just like you said, like seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, then all these lesser things will be added unto you. These lesser things, because we can put money, success, status, home, whatever title, that could become an adultery if we put it above His kingdom and make that our focus. So what God does in and through this refinement process, because when you put gold in refinement, impurities rise to the top, which is a massive blessing. And then you're able to see the impurities. You simply repent, and then God begins to transform. So it's just a whole process I've seen of going into life and an abundant life in incredible freedom.
Wow. Yeah, that's good.